Thank you very much for coming out tonight and joining us for our TAC talk. My name is Drew Dameron, and I'm the library manager here at the Tokyo American Club. For tonight's TAC talk, we're very happy to be hosting Mr. Tetsuji Shibayama, who will be sharing his art world expertise with us. Following his presentation, we will have an open Q&A session from those attending in person and virtually. And for those online, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions to me, and I'll ask them on your behalf. Thank you. Tetsuji Shibayama is Managing Director of AG Art Gaia Holdings Corporation, an organization which provides consulting services for companies, educational institutions, NPOs, and government organizations in social responsibility activities, as well as art and culture programs. This includes planning and managing corporate art collections, art and artist support programs, and auctions in various forms. He is also a visiting professor in arts administration courses at various institutions, including Tokyo University of the Arts and Aoyama Gakuen University. Shibayama started his career at Mitsubishi Corporation after graduating from Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo with a degree in economics. After earning an MBA from Harvard Business School, he went on to work for Rockefeller & Co. in New York for 5 years. He returned to Japan to become the president and managing director of Sothebys Japan for 10 years, along the way going through the firm's auctioneer training. Among various auctions he conducted, he was the auctioneer of the first charity auction in Japan for the benefit of the Asian Cultural Council, a part of Rockefeller charitable institutions. He was also the auctioneer at a New York University Charity Gala held here at the Tokyo American Club. Most recently, he has introduced 4 young artists to our Frederick Harris Gallery Committee, and they will be exhibiting their work from June until September this year. The FHG committee chooses the artworks here at the club. Every 3 weeks, they change their exhibitions, and you are all welcome to purchase artworks that are on display. It's located just upstairs. Please stop by when you have a moment. Please enjoy and support these exhibitions, and please join me in welcoming our guest this evening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction, Drew. And thank you very much for coming to listen to my TAC talk tonight. Yes, of course, I look different after the corona pandemic because I began to grow my mustache and beard just for fun because I'm always in the mask. But yes, as Drew mentioned, this is my first visit after the charity gala in, I think it was just here, a big ballroom at the TAC for New York University alumni charity gala party. And I was chosen, it was my honor to be chosen or selected as the auctioneer for that NYU charity auction, even though I am a graduate of Harvard Business School. Just a smile. Okay, thank you. I will be talking about tonight my experience and career to date, and also I will be talking about the challenges facing the particular Japanese market in arts, and of course I will talk about my current missions to combat the challenge, and I would like to give you a few words on advice to if you intend or cautiously or uncautiously to become a new collector of art. And also, I have to thank Joanne and Beatrice, who are not here, who are on the committee of Frederick Harris Gallery to make this happen. And I'm also grateful for the writer, Joanne Bailey, for this article. It was about a 3-hour Zoom interview to make this wonderful, wonderful article. And if you take a look at this magazine, page 10, the magazine also there is a page on one of the emerging artists that you will see upstairs. It's very wonderfully done. Thank you very much. I will start with my career to date, why I end up doing what I'm doing. I don't know if you have seen the video of Steve Jobs at Stanford commencement speech, he talked about dots and lines. And if you can relate my talk to his speech, which was one of the best speeches in the century, at least the college commencements. My career to date started as a copper metal trader and uranium trader for, of course, peaceful reasons. And MBA at Harvard and investments at Rockefeller and Company, family office. So I have chosen cautiously or uncautiously perhaps a very, very optimistic career, no specific career aspiration. So, you know, when you ask, what have you done in your lifetime? One could say, oh, it's in finance, marketing, engineering, IT, but nothing. I may be saying that it's art management. Art management is such a sort of abstract term. Anything could be art management as far as it's related to art. So I had no interest actually at all until about second year at the Rockefeller and Company, which I joined after graduating from Harvard Business School in 1990. And again, by chance, it's really by chance that went to career in art business. And here is, you know, the dots are like a Mitsubishi, copper metal trading, uranium, MBA investments, and just art business today. These are dots, and the lines were drawn retrospectively. That's what Steve Jobs said, I don't know, maybe 1997 commencement speech. Then I went to work for Sothebys, which is the oldest auction company in existence, founded in 1744. One of the oldest, it's the oldest auction company in existence, the largest actually art dealer in the world, because Sothebys now is involved in private sales, auction sales being public sales, private sales being, you know, head-to-head sort of a private one-to-one sales of artworks. And but afterwards, maybe 8 to 10 years, I had worked for Sotheby's for 10 years, and maybe 8 to 10th year time, I have begun to realize that there is a big problem in Japan, which I will talk about later, in arts, art market in general. Then I went back to Rockefeller philosophy, which is no-name artist, so many artists, which I will describe later. Then I end up founding Art Gaia Holdings Corporation, which Drew mentioned, which is in the business of managing artist career and other things. And today I'm standing here to talk in front of you as a TAC talk speaker to talk about art career, emerging artists, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not quite sure how familiar you are in arts or art businesses, so I would touch on some basic terminologies and players in the art market, just for your reference or introduction. Oh, by the way, I will speak for 45 minutes, then 15 minutes will be left for Q&A. Here are the charts, circles of art players in the world, in the art market, so-called. You know, on top, there are artists. Artists obviously make art. And from the clockwise, from artists at the top, galleries. Galleries are the place you sell or buy art, directly or indirectly. Then auctions. Auctions are basically one method of trading art, basically exchange of artworks. And art fairs are trade art show, basically for galleries, just like Las Vegas IT show or Frankfurt Motor Show. Then you have museums. Museums play obviously very important part of art business in terms of making or valuing or adding value to artists or preserving historically important objects and artworks. And collectors are obviously yourselves included. Collectors are those who collect art, or institutions like companies and museums are also collectors as well. Then critic and consultants. I will not touch on these. These also play a very important role, but I will focus today on the artists on top, and obviously galleries, auctions, and collectors for tonight. The second chart I will show you. This I use for my college education in art business or art management. And also at Tokyo University of the Arts, I will use this chart as a components of art markets. Basically, this is structure of art. You saw before, this is the functional representation of what constitutes art market. This is the structure of art market. Basically, you have in the yellow part is the primary market from left, far left, artists, galleries, and agents, and then you have buyers in the middle, a vertical line. Then you have in blue, light blue, you have a secondary market. So in art market, just like real estate or cars, you have new cars and used cars and so on. Then you have stocks and bonds. You have primary dealers in stocks and bonds, like government bonds. I'm sure some of you are in finance. Then you have secondary market, like a Tokyo Stock Exchange for stocks and bonds, real estate and everything. Then you have arts in secondary markets as well. And the Sothebys, my former employer, and Christie's for that matter, are one of the most important dealers through auctions, either both in primary and secondary markets. So this is the basic terminology I would like you to remember when I talk about these art markets. This is what Sotheby's looks like today. And this is nothing like when it was founded 1744. In 1744, this is a lecture I was given on the day one at Sotheby's. In 1744, Sotheby's was just what do you call it, flea market, sort of, just behind the church every Sunday afternoon, 18th century London or elsewhere. It was just like a book off in Japan where they sell books, used books. It was just like that at Sotheby's in London or Christie's, anywhere. But today, it's like a huge, bubbly looking or sounding entertainment almost. You talk about $100 million Basquiat, $500 million Da Vinci. On the left is obviously it's Andy Warhol. In the middle is, I think it's a Gerhard Richter. And on the right-hand side, I think, is William de Kooning. So these are really billions of yen type of art that are traded at Sotheby's and Christie's. So the Sotheby's really makes public markets for works of art, just like Christie's, because there are no, Tokyo Stock Exchange or New York Stock Exchange, Frankfurt, anywhere that the government controlled exchanges of arts. It just doesn't exist, for various reasons. So this is my former job, which I did for 10 years. Just for your information, the auctioneer there is a young man, my old friend and old colleague, Oliver Barker, who's, I think if you look at the YouTube, he almost always comes, because he was the auctioneer for the Basquiat, which was bought by one of the Japanese successful entrepreneurs, Mr. Maezawa. And I think he may have done the Jeff Koons $1 billion or $100 million auction as well. But anyway, so this almost looks like an entertainment. Roughly 2,000 people attending, hugely quiet, and but they trade billions of dollars a night for auctions. The next slide I will show you is that what Sotheby's experience told me or taught me. The art markets are represented. This is just my personal interpretation of how to represent or how to present for you how it's structured. It's basically pyramid, just like anything else. I would show you the example of sports, which I think is applied to arts as well. You basically have athletes, like Olympic athletes, and institutions like athletes, Olympics, World Cups, Wimbledon for tennis, and so on, American Open, US Open, and so on. On top, then you have the bottom of the pyramid people, like high school or college basketball, and so on and so forth. In Japan, it would be, high school baseball at the Koshien Stadium. You basically go from the bottom. You start from the bottom to go upstairs. And Shohei Ohtani, for example, if you saw home run this morning, he's on top of the athletic pyramids as a person, as athletes. And institutions, what I mean is organizational institutions where these sports events are held. And on the right-hand side is actually the money involved. You know, you talk about Olympics, a huge amount. World Cup soccer, the same thing. Then if I go back to art, art is the same, sort of similar pyramid, if not the same. On the left-hand side, again, this is my own interpretation. So artists on the far left and dollars and cents and yen on the right, far right, and in the middle are institutions, Sothebys and Christie's included. So basically, artists usually start from the bottom of pyramid, like college graduates, New York institutions, Tokyo University of Arts. You know, in London, you find the Royal Academy of Arts, Royal College of Arts, all these places. Then you gradually go up the ladder or pyramid to become a mid-career artist. His or her works may be purchased by museums, famous collectors, and so on. Then you go up to the top, like Picasso. When I say artist in this chart or my talk, I would include both deceased artists and living contemporary artists, just for your reference. And you talk about Picasso's, Rembrandt's, Hokusai, Jakju, and Monet's, and all these artists on top of the ladder or pyramid. Then on the right-hand side are the prices and the value. Value includes historical value as well as a money value. And the huge bubble, as you may see today, for very, very contemporary. It may not be a bubble in the end, but people tend to think that it's a hugely bubble because prices of contemporary art are rising at all-time high today. And then in the middle are the institutions. I think the stock exchanges are basically Sotheby's and Christie's on top. And in terms of museums, obviously MoMA and the Met. And I said, I don't know, I'm not sure if you can see it. At the bottom of the top pyramid is Ota Fine Arts. Ota-san is one of my friends. He's a dealer or representative of Yayoi Kusama. Hugely profitable, hugely huge revenues every year, as you can see. So these are really top artists, agents, exchanges, managements, and so on. But again, there are also bottom of pyramid institutions, sort of like my company, Art Guy Corporation. We deal in the bottom of pyramid works of art and people, artists. And on the far right, I don't know if you have seen the movie. It's a great movie. I recommend you see it if you haven't seen it. It's Herb and Dorothy. They are the New York couple. Herb was I think he's a post office worker, and Dorothy was a librarian. Both of them are, public servants, and I don't know how much they earned, but together, I think it was a movie that they together earned like $50,000 a year. But every weekend, they went out to the galleries in New York to buy one or two for the couple. Then if you continue to buy two works of art by no-name artists, for 1 year, then you would end up 100, 2 times 50. They did it for 50 years. So 100 times 50 years is 5,000 objects for 50 years. And Rockefeller's actually did it the same way, except for the different way or more. Rockefeller's, if I'm not mistaken, it's a private conversation I did with some of the family members and their employees. For past 50 to 60 years, they had purchased, with the Chase Manhattan Bank, which David Rockefeller was chairman of, about 60,000 works for 50 years, which means 1,200 works a year, which means 100 works a month. Of course, the banks and institutions can, exhibit that number, but Herb and Dorothy were just a, New York couple. They had limited space, which is just their New York home. But they had amassed 5,000 no-name artists. If you did it for 50 years, surely enough, or quite a few of them included, people like Mark Roscoe, Lichtenstein, and all these masters who are now on top of the pyramid. So one of the learnings, any master of art, when he or she was very young, just out of college or just out of nowhere, were no-name artists. That pyramid on the right-hand side of all of the places really exists. The only place that didn't exist, still barely exists, is Japan. That was my biggest finding after 8, 9, 10 years at Sothebys. So that's the challenge I faced. I began to be I was actually managing just Japan. I was part of the so-called international committee. So my mission was to for the company to make money. It's like a GAFA type. A country's revenue almost doesn't matter. It's Sothebys as a global company that matters. It bonuses, stock options, and your pay is dependent upon, the higher your level, dependent upon how the company, Sothebys as a company, does, not Japan office does. I was part of the international. That's, I think, the GAFA type of the management, if I may. So I began to notice, and I began to be more sort of patriotic. Why is it that it doesn't, the BOP didn't or doesn't exist in Japan? This is Japan chart. I took the far left chart. Then I'd like to see this pyramid. It was taken from the far left chart, which you saw a few slides ago. This is a chart of Japan, and the bottom of pyramid didn't exist. Bottom pyramid means that it was very difficult for college graduates from art schools to continue his or her art activities because basically there are no buyers. And just as statistics in art industry are very, very vague, and it's not like the stocks and bonds, cars, other industries. They're very vague and abstract. So please excuse me if I'm not quoting enough numbers, even in Q&A sessions. But this I asked for education ministry, so this could be, I hope, as accurate as it can be. Japan as a whole, as a country, produces around 20,000 graduates every year from roughly 80 art schools in Japan, from Hokkaido to Okinawa. Almost each prefecture has at least one art college or institution, teaching institutions in Japan. And I go around, obviously before the pandemic, I used to visit with my colleagues in the company about 30 of the 80 schools in Japan, again from Hokkaido to Okinawa. And but about 75%, 3/4 of these graduates just give up artistic activities and just give up his or her aspiration to be an artist. Why? Because there are no markets. This is the pyramid, or the bottom, or the sections I really began to notice very, very severely. And I almost had a why is it happening? Why is it possible in Japan? It's at the time, the second largest economy, if not the third. Why are we not able to make this grow as fast as the other places can, the bottom pyramid? Now, obviously, we have on top of the market, we have few names, Kusama, Murakami, and Nara. And these, Sothebys almost doesn't matter because they are the artists that make us money. But we call it, some Japanese experts call them as almost expert artists because they had to develop their career outside of Japan at some point in their lives. And why? Again, for the same reasons, lack of existence of the bottom of the pyramid. Now we have in the middle, emerging artists. The middle market, these are the artists we are seeing. Particularly, when you go back or when you return a few days later, please if you haven't seen it, please take a look at the Frederick Harris Gallery. And the exhibitions are just after the bottom of pyramid type of the artist that you see. So that's the challenges I had begun to face having worked with Sothebys for several years. I don't know if you know, this is supposed to be a joke. Do you know Atsugiri Jason? He's an American comedian. I suppose not. Atsugiri Jason, it's an American comedian working in Japan. Atsugiri Jason, razor cut Jason. Atsugiri Jason says, why do Japanese not do this? This is just a joke. He's a comedian. He was probably very popular a few years ago. And this is the question. I'm just sort of, if I were him, he would say, why Japanese people do not buy young Japanese artists' works. And again, why? There are various reasons. Lack of culture and the lack of history of buying these artists, even though people, my former clients bought the huge number of Picasso collectors, Monet collectors, Jakuchu, and Hokusai collectors in Japan. I could still remember these people. But when it comes to no-name artists, they have no idea whether they should buy it or not. It's just that the culture of buying these no-name artists didn't exist. So why not me making this possible? And when I left Sothebys in 2005, I began to do this, and the journey of pilgrims still continues. And this continues to be my mission for my if not my life, for long-term career. So anyway, but this mission gave me an opportunity actually to go back retrospectively to my Rockefeller days, which is this. This is myself, obviously, without the mustache and beard a few years ago, with David Rockefeller Jr., then Susan, his wife. And on the right-hand side is the Andy Warhol picture, or prints, I think. Again, this is retrospectively, I went back to the Rockefeller family office and discovered that, or learned again, they were the major collectors of course, they are major collectors of major arts like Monet, Rembrandt's, Chinese ceramics, and everything. But I think what is important to me as far as this family is concerned, they really began to practice of purchasing, nurturing no-name artists, so many artists in America. And David Rockefeller, his father, started a concept or movement called BCA. That stands for Business Communities for Arts in 1950s. That means when this was about 5 or 6 years after the victory of America, after the World War II. And America realized as a whole the military strength, politics and economics, they are really great to start as a Pax Americana, but they realized they are really lacking arts and culture. That's what they stimulated these sort of top-tier politicians and business people, his father, to cultivate and nurture and develop American domestic artists, who are now, one of whom include, of course, Andy Warhol. And on the next page, I took it with their permission, but I think it's Basquiat on the left-hand side or Chuck Close on the right-hand side. They're very masters of contemporary artists, but just think of when it was early. It was when these artists were just no-name artists that they really began to purchase these artists. And with, again, 60,000 works of art for 50 years, a few artists were very successful. But they didn't mean to say that the rest of 59,500 artists were happy. They're very, very happy. So that's the concept I wanted to borrow from Rockefeller days. And also another example of this is my second alma mater, Harvard Business School. This is just an example for your information. On that same token, HBS, Harvard Business School, began its not corporate, the college or what do you call it? School art collection, contemporary art in almost 1995. But for different reasons or causes, they think that the hanging or exhibiting no-name artists or so many artists creates or stimulates creative thinking for students, myself, of course, included. Whenever I go back to reunions, I always take a look. They have now about 2,000 works of contemporary artists, no-name artists. They're still no-name. It's only been maybe 20 years. So most of them are still no-name artists, but I think some of them are gradually climbing the corporate or art ladder. Some of them may be collected by MoMA and so on and so forth. This is what it looks like today, Harvard Business School. It's not a museum, so it's not curated. It's just bunch of contemporary artworks that are hanging. You wouldn't even know. I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice that actually there are office collections at Rockefeller and Company and at the Harvard Business School. So that's would lead to my next page, going to how to collect, my collecting habits and so on. My mission, this is final page of a mission, is actually the creating interest at the bottom of market in arts in Japan. And again, there are so many artists, so many graduates give up after a few years. That's really not good for Japan, for the country. And of course, merged with the idea or philosophy of creating interest and a good society, rediscovery of Rockefeller experiences and HBS, art collection, I began to do what is called venture community for arts. So what I began to do in 2006 is really to have a corporate sponsors, just like BCA, Business Committee for Arts, 60 years ago that David Rockefeller did. I'm not David Rockefeller, by the way. Of course, I started with a smaller way of some, Mitsubishi Corporation was one of them, and Japan Rail was one of them. Basically, for the large corporations who would purchase in bulk many numbers of no-name, too many artists. So I worked with several of corporations and individuals, my former clients at Sothebys, that some of them are very keen on, from Picasso to no-name artists. Some of them are very keen. Most of them are not so keen because they have the money or wealth to buy Picassos. Why not Picasso? Why, no-name artists? So it's just a matter of taste, I think. But I just want to say one thing. This is in red. David Harris is my former colleague at Rockefeller and Company who joined almost in the same day as I did, 1990. He's from Ohio. He's a quintessentially American, Midwest Ohioan. He and I sat together for lunch 5 years ago. Actually, we had never been preached in the office. We had never been taught that even these arts existed. We were taken to perhaps once or twice to MoMA, which was founded by Rockefellers, for lunch, but they never preached us. And maybe that's why, in retrospect, that's why we began to like art. If I was taught, how to appreciate art, we might not have liked it at all. That's one thing. So just hanging, look at the Harvard Business School. They have no curating. They have no, what do you call it, genre or whatever you call it. It's just that they purchase with a $100,000 check from alumni donation. They purchase about $100, which means that $100 to $1,000 each, no-name artist. And but basically, it was very important for us, for David Harris and I, to like art, is that that environment in the office for 8 hours a day or more, or 10 hours at the business school, we sat or learned or worked in the no-name artist contemporary art collection. So it was just a brain, it may be, I'm not a brain surgeon, so I'm not sure, but you have to, I think I was very lucky to be immersed by chance in the work environment where no-name artists are almost everywhere, from the kitchen to receptionist, to elevator hall, conference room, even the restroom, and anywhere. And so if that's the concept of, the real concept of BCA developed by David Rockefeller, why not do this in Japan? That's what I have been doing. So I've been working with several of venture companies and to try to make bottom of pyramid markets, basically try to purchase all these no-name and recent graduates works of art. They are really, I don't know if you have been to graduate shows, exhibition, Tokyo University of Arts. They're really great. They're like a museum. I don't see any differences between Royal Academy of Arts summer exhibitions to Tokyo University of Arts graduate exhibitions. The quality, to me, is very, very high. But in terms of markets, which didn't or doesn't exist in Japan, they have no buyers. So that's the model that I want to do going forward. But also the second from the bottom point, what I've been doing, just for your information, is Japanese history teaching has a gap, to me, between Meiji and after the war. We actually have not, I don't want to go too much into political issues, but Japanese social science education completely lacks of reckoning the World War II. And so does the art history. If you lack that history teaching between Meiji, Taisho, and early Showa, military cabinets and the loss of the war, you would not be able to really reckon, to do the total reckoning of art history, because art history is always go in parallel with the political, military, and economic history. That's what I would like to do. To somewhere to work with Chinese, Americans, Koreans, to really come up with a total reckoning of what we did and what we did not do. But again, I'm saying this: art history is the same in Japan. So what I'm trying to say is, I would like to see some of the Japanese artists, modern artists, deceased, have huge potential, as well as the Japanese contemporary artists. Just as a side talk, almost. So the reason why I'm doing this with the entrepreneurs in terms of VCA, Venture Community Arts, young entrepreneurs. Now this is new phenomenon. There are quite a few young entrepreneurs in Japan. They are very keen to collect, but they are not billionaires. They are not like American IT billionaires, but they have some wealth. They have they have their companies taken to public or sold. They have some, I'm talking about early 30s men and women, entrepreneurs. They have some successful companies to go public or sold, and they're there to buy. They share the similar concept with me. So that's what I'm trying to do. Because I'm telling them that the entrepreneurial career, this is very crowded or busy charts, but I give this lecture sometimes to entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurial career is very, very similar to artist career. At the bottom of the pyramid, you're never understood, but you always have, if you're lucky enough, you would have angel investors. Then you have angel collectors. That's what I call angel collector. And Harvard Dorothy are the quintessential angel collectors of the time. So that's the chart. And finally, we will go into that's the conclusion of my mission, as you can see, basically to fill up the gap in Japan of the bottom of pyramid. Again, there's huge supply of quality. Again, 20,000 every year quality. If you talk about quality, maybe if you took 10% of 20,000 high quality or potentially masters, you still talk about 2,000 artists starting, just started last March or starting in September. Huge supply. It's just a matter of creating market, as far as I'm concerned. So now I will go into the final point for 5 minutes. Final points for today is a few advice to new collectors or even existing collectors. Basically, I think if you could remember the pyramid of artists and institutions and wealth, money, I think first I'd like you to ask yourself what you want to be in the pyramid and your objective. It could be your instinct, fun, decoration. It could be anything. Support for artists. Please go up to Frederick Harris Gallery or anything. Your corporate interests as well as private interests were in pyramid. Now, again, this is the same pyramid that you saw several minutes ago, or 15 minutes ago. So my advice to new collectors is, first of all, why collect art? It's fun. It's for philanthropic reasons. Maybe your relatives, your sons and daughters, your fathers and mothers, your brothers and sisters, maybe an artist who need support. Whatever reason, support. You could be angel collector. You could be, you could have also financial objectives. It may make money if you're lucky. If you buy Picasso, asset, and all other reasons. I think that in my experience, Sotheby, most of the people are sort of in between your instinct and also financial objectives, where and where you want to be in the pyramid, on the far right pyramid. And basically also where that relates to the far left pyramid, where in artist career you would like to buy. You have to ask your questions. You have to ask yourself your own questions, whether you do it privately or you do it your own with your own company or corporate. And this is the chart. This is actually my final chart. But again, maybe on the far, again and again, on the far left chart pyramid, to make the top tier artists, whether deceased or contemporary, Picasso, Kusama, Rembrandt, you really have to have the bottom of the pyramid. So you really have to have all participants in the whole pyramid. That's my, again, athletic examples. We have to, for Shohei Ohtani, to be a Shohei Ohtani of Angels, he used to be just a high school player, from his childhood. There were people who trained him. There were agents who transferred him from Hokkaido baseball team to Angels, sorry, not Angels as a baseball team, not the Angel. So my final chart is this, the type of art collecting. I also buy sometimes arts and craft myself with my wife who's here today. But if I may, my advice to you is, again, where you want to be on this pyramid. Obviously, the budget also may be a determinant where you want to start. Mr. Maezawa, who bought $100 million basket, he was obviously able financially to buy that sort of painting himself. But not too many people in Japan or in the world are able to pay for one picture $100 million, if not $500 million. So this is final chart before I go to Q&A session. Basically, you are objectives. This is my classification with my experience of Sothebys and Rockefeller. A lot of people are in between objects. But you have to, again, ask yourself, start from where? Usually people start from the far left. It's fun. If it's fun to have art, it's interior decoration. You support artists for philanthropic reasons. Again, maybe your brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, may be an artist, you want to support it. You could buy them from artists directly or galleries and auctions. But this is not a session on how to buy, where, and how much to pay, but this is just a philosophical question I'd like to ask you. And you have to, be motivated. You have to have some motivation rather than no motivation. I'm sure you have one or two. And on the far right are the people who would buy arts almost as an asset, whether consciously or unconsciously. People who would spend $100 million for one picture obviously have some financial assets to pay for it, or real estate or anything. And if it's an asset type of purchases, I would recommend that you have professional advice, whether Sotheby's, galleries, museums are very, very important, curators, whether the artist in line would make good presence in 10, 15, 20 years later. And of course, you have to pay attention to authenticity if you're talking about assets, art as an asset, and provenance. Provenance is a list of former owners, and the title due diligence. I wouldn't go deep into this, but these are the things that you really need to think about if you want to purchase really, really expensive paintings or works of art. But I would really recommend just to trust your taste, trust your instincts, myself included. But instincts were just not made possible because I made my instincts just out of unconsciously working or walking in the offices of Rockefeller and Company, perhaps if not the Harvard Business School. And mistakes are unavoidable. Mistakes make your collecting stronger. That's my message. Also, this is my caveat. Listening too much to professionals, curators, dealers, auction company representatives may harm your instinct. Just use your instincts, whether you like it or not. And it's just art. It's fun. So this is it's over 45 minutes, and this concludes my my talk. And again, thank you very much. I especially thank Joanne Yonemura and Beatrice Weber, both of whom are not here, and Drew, of course, and Joanne Bailey. Joanne Bailey, she was the writer for that article in the magazine. And I had about a 3-hour interview with her. It was really stimulating. She helped me create actually this chart. Again, so please visit Frederick Harris Gallery on your way home or on your return. And that's where you will see emerging Japanese artists just going upstairs. And thank you very much. The exhibition continues until the end of September, so please enjoy the rest of the exhibition. And this concludes my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to open it up for questions. If anyone has any, I'm going to pass the microphone to you.
I can say it like that. You said that you entered art rather late, yeah? And I was wondering, may I ask you how old you were when you switched into the art world?
I was, the Sothebys was my first professional art career. So Rockefeller was I was just a investment analyst. Yeah. So it was a Sothebys 1995. So I was roughly, so that was December. I was 39 when I joined Sotheby. 38 to 39. 39 years old. So yeah, again, Sotheby's I had no idea how Sotheby's work, but the similarity in management at Sotheby's was actually with Mitsubishi Corporation. Mitsubishi Corporation is Sogo Shosha. And Sogo Shosha, it's a trading company that deals in various materials. Sogo Shosha, Mitsubishi doesn't make anything. It's not a manufacturer or it's not an IT company. It invests. It would sell products or services that someone else made. Sotheby's is exactly the same way, but you have to have some managerial layers. You have locations, Tokyo, if it's Mitsubishi, Tokyo, London, Hong Kong, New York, and so on and so forth. Sotheby's is the same way, New York, London, Tokyo, Hong Kong. So managerially, the organizational structure was very similar when I joined Sotheby's with that of Mitsubishi. I said that at the recruiter, and they were very impressed, I hope. So again, I had almost at Sotheby's, I had almost no idea. I knew Picasso, and they began to teach me, of course, how much they are. They took me to a museum. The great thing about Tokyo is if you could go to almost any museums in Tokyo or in Kyoto, and almost anywhere in at least one museum in Japan, you could see what Sotheby's is selling. From Picasso to Rembrandt, Jakju, everywhere. Chinese ceramics, Korean ceramics, anything. So maybe it's a long end of my answers to your question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm sorry I was a little late tonight, so I apologize for that. It pleased me to hear the name of Rembrandt. I'm from the Netherlands.
I'm sorry?
I'm from the Netherlands. Netherlands.
Have I been to Netherlands? Have I been to Netherlands?
No. I just say that I'm from the Netherlands.
You're from the, sorry, yes, thank you. Yes.
So I was wondering, when you talk about young artists, isn't it true that they need a story about what they try to express? And so you say something about auctions, stores, galleries. I'm sure they have to be there as well. Isn't it true for people to sort of be interested in a particular artist to have a story that surrounds the works?
Yes.
What are your ideas about that?
That's almost anywhere in the pyramid, particularly for young and emerging artists. Yes, we need, first of all, I always ask him or her, the new artist to be, graduates, why do you make art? What is your story? So I do ask these questions. And I also ask them to study art history. Where do you want to be? How do you want your own work about compared to, whether it's impressionist, abstract, or, some of the, actually 20,000, of the 20,000, I think roughly 1/4 is koge, craft making, not just, paintings. So Japan is really big in craft making, koge, lacquers, ceramics, glasses. textiles and so on. And so even textiles and lacquers, these are really contemporary artists. It's just that the material that they use is old material. So the new, artists do, as you mentioned, stories of himself or herself. So that's what I do. Actually, that's the aspect I help these young artists to make story. So yeah, so it really depends on an individual. For example, if you go upstairs, Ueno Yujiro, his theme, his story is somewhere in between lives and objects, and prayers and winds, gods. So he has his own story, and you will see in the panel is his thesis of his works of art. So I do help him come up with his own ideas. I edit, his own bios and his concepts and so on. But it would be him who would make, obviously, artwork himself. But in terms of editing or curating his works, I do help. But it's actually himself who would do the work. I just help. Would that be an answer? Thank you.
Sorry I was late too. Thank you very much for your lecture. I found it very interesting. One thing I wanted to ask, I've been going to many of the art, like Art Basel and other art fairs in Hong Kong and elsewhere. And obviously, you've had a lot of the big names, international artists presented. In the last 15 years, you've had the Chinese artists and recently the Korean artists. But one thing I've found is that we don't really see many galleries or exhibitions from Japanese artists, whether they be new ones or mid-career, maybe one or two galleries. And is that because, as you had mentioned, the lack of support for artists when they come out of school? I mean, you mentioned that obviously Kusama, Murakami, they all made their mark overseas first before coming back. And from what I remember.
Yes.
So I was just wondering what
the
reasons.
It's really you touched on the very problem of the Japanese art market. Do you know Gagosian or this French? These actually, I talked about Sothebys and Christie. These are two major auction companies, but there are, several more of much smaller companies. But I didn't talk about you would see Gagosian, that's the largest gallery in the world with global representation. The French one and the one in several ones. I think the Korean gallery is also, Kukje is very strong in global representation. So for all these reasons, cultural, history, money, and so on, we don't have large enough galleries to compete or to make these star artists ourselves in the country. So that's really also another challenge. But again, I thought maybe it's sort of a high class, institutions. It takes time, I think. It takes time. It takes enough time to develop or redevelop the bottom of the pyramid market. And I'm hoping in I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, we have maybe with M&As, we have maybe one big gallery representing all these Japanese artists. Maybe, I don't know, do you know Koyama Tomiyo and all these Sky? If 5 or 6 smaller galleries, they're almost always small, but they have some global representation. If they merge themselves to become one or maybe half of the Gagosian, that would make a really global representation. The Gagosians are really able to compete or to deal with Sothebys and Christie's, and smaller galleries or smaller companies are not, in terms of, negotiation power. The larger you are, the more power you have. So that's what I think I like. We have much smaller representation in galleries, as well as auctions and, for that matter, artists. So that's a problem. So, but I hope that in the next decade or so, we would have big enough galleries to represent more of the Japanese artists globally.
So if I can ask, so you're saying these smaller galleries don't have the resources to participate in an art fair that you have?
Right, yes. They're smaller. I want them to be big. So if you like, please invest in, or please make one. Please.
I don't understand that because there are so many smaller Chinese galleries. You are talking Hong
Yes. Well, it's maybe history and culture. They want to do their own things rather than just merging themselves to be big one, to make a big one. So yeah, it's a very early stage of, yeah, I think, yes, I think it's a very early stage. Again, the pyramids. I'm sorry? Yes. Yes. Mm. Yes. Mm. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry for the virtual people at home. They'll need to use the microphone, please. Thank you.
We've been seeing recently news in the art world about NFTs, digital arts. And
yes.
in fact, in March of this year, I believe there was a piece that was sold for $69 million. So this is one way in which individual artists could actually sell directly and make a big difference. Do you see any of this NFT movement happening in Japan, and what is your thought about that?
I was so scared of someone would ask that question at this section. Yes, it's just almost like anyone else. It's very, very difficult to predict what could happen. But I have been working with some companies and individual artists, particularly for those for these digital, of the 20,000, I would say maybe 200 of the 1% are making digital arts from Japanese college art schools. And particularly one or two artists I've been working with we have been working with some of the Japanese domestic artists for NFT, potentially NFT digital art. But in terms of, I'm sure you know, the platforms are different, not compatible. So there are a lot of work to do going forward. Even elsewhere, Blue Ocean, it's like whatever was traded at Sothebys would not be traded at Christie's in the early stage of NFT because the trading platform is not compatible. Am I right? So these are the things that we really have to conquer around the world. And it's still early stage, I think. It's like an 1880 car industry where Ford, about 2,000 car manufacturers in America. Now you have 3. So there's a huge number of NFT entrepreneurs today. But I have been working. And if you know the company called Start Barn, which is the Tokyo University of Art, which is a Todai venture, on the blockchain. They started with a blockchain application to art market. I have been working just by chance with them to attach a digital certificate to these no-name artists as an experimental practices with Tokyo University of the Arts and Startban and myself. So yeah, it's very early stage, but I have been doing some researches. Thank you. Well, we could talk privately later. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for your insights. As artists struggle to go up the pyramid, my understanding is that one of the things they engage into are these artists in residence programs. Yeah. And I was wondering whether you see any particular benefits in these artists in residence programs for an artist's career, and whether, if so, some of these benefits can actually be beneficial for non-artists.
I mean, artists in residence as a whole, is the question other method than artists in residence, or I'm not sure if I understood your question, but your question is?
So my understanding is that artists in residence programs are some of the activities in which these no-name, so many artists engage into as they try to go up and grow as artists.
Yeah.
So these programs, my understanding is, have certain benefits for the artists.
Yes.
And if you agree with that, my question is whether you think some of these benefits can also benefit non-artists.
Non-artists?
Non-artists, people who are non-artists who could potentially participate in these type of programs.
Oh yes, it's possible to the extent that the applicants have artistic aspiration. But normally artists in residence, they're limited capacity. So they would typically ask for your aspiration, why you want to be an artist. But also they would ask, your sort of track record as an artist. You graduate from college, making arts and so on. So when you say non-artist, the artist with no background, education?
I'm imagining someone who, for example, is an accountant but has a strong desire to paint and things like that.
Oh, I see. You mean the switch career from business to art?
Not necessarily switch, but engage in some of that creative process.
I think it's always possible. By the way, the Jeff Koons, is it Jeff Koons or Damien Hirst? They were bankers, I think, before they became artists. Either one or both of them, is that right? So they're really good examples of ex-bankers or financial people who became very, very successful artists. It's one of the most successful artists, Damien. Do you know Damien Hirst? I think he was like a not copper, but a foreign exchange trader in Singapore or something. So it's all possible for long, but I think you really have to have a sort of a guts. I don't want to be an artist myself. I thought it's very, very difficult. I cannot even paint. I cannot even write calligraphy myself. So I think it depends. It's possible. If you want to, would you like to be an artist?
Me?
In your career? Yes.
No.
Yeah, I think anything is possible, but usually artists in residence programs would only take those who have some track record or college education in arts or art making.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think your insight that you're trying to share with us today is that the bottom of the pyramid in Japan is small, thin, or weak. And I'm not understanding what is the difference between the bottom of the pyramid here in Japan to, say, the UK, which is where I'm from, or the US, or another market, maybe China. Is it that the so many artists who are graduating from school have to leave their artistic profession because there aren't enough local dealers, there aren't enough stores, there aren't enough Herb and Dorothy's? Is that the reason? Because then the focus should be much more on the institutions in the bottom part of the pyramid and on the collectors.
Yes. Oh yes, I've only lived in the States, in New York and Boston, and at Sothebys and Rockefellers. I frequently visited London and oftentimes Paris. And almost every corner, if not every, in New York, for example, if you go to Soho at the time, if you go to, what do you call it, the down lower Manhattan, you would see almost every corner gallery, mega gallery, small gallery, the bottom of pyramid type of gallery, where you could buy, you could spend $500 for a print or even $100 for a print. That is very hard to find in Tokyo. It's just there's some statistics, I'm sure, but I'd love to see how many, there are any statistics available in New York, how many galleries and what pyramid structure. But my gut feeling is really there are just so many or many dealers and galleries who are dealing in no-name artists. There are also the institutions, galleries and auctions. They have tiers. For each tier of the pyramid, they do exist. But it's just that in Japan, or relatively or absolutely, I have seen lack of the bottom pyramid in the institutions. That means that the lack of pyramid in collecting habits as well. So that's really harming the career of an artist in Japan in relative terms. So if you walk from here to maybe Kamiyacho Station or Roppongi Station, how many galleries might you see? Maybe one or two in Roppongi. And that could not happen that's not the case in London, Paris. A similar place like here. What would be the equivalent in New York? This would be like a Midtown New York or I don't know, whatever you call it, maybe Upper East Side or whatever it may be. You would see almost every corner you walk in commercial and urban area, a commercial gallery where they sell whichever whereby in that pyramid. That's the difference, I think. That's what I've been trying to challenge. So it's both I think it's mostly institutional and cultural, that these artists, graduates, are almost wasted to me. So that's what creating demand domestically to make that bottom pyramid larger would make the entire pyramid, or the top of the pyramid higher, the entire pyramid larger. I may be, broadly wrong, but that's what I've seen after working for Sothebys, and that's what I've been doing. Again, the journey of the pilgrim still continues. Whether I'm successful or not, I'm not sure. Maybe a decade or my next generation. But it's just that why is it not possible in Japan is my own question. It could be cultural, it could be loss of war, loss of historical, reckoning. It could be any, combination of different issues. Is that okay?
Thank you.
That's a very good question. Yes, thank you.
We got time for one more question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to know, you said, well, what could be done about that situation? So what is your role, actually, you are going to fulfill in the future with your project here?
Yes.
To start to elevate the bottom line of the pyramid? What could be done? What would you do in your position or in your future position, whatever, to make a change? What could it be, the change?
Yes. I skipped this slide. I may have, it was this slide. The bottom line, the bottom of this chart is what I've been doing, basically. First of all, I've been training. I don't just teach at the art university. I teach at Aoyama Gakuin and other sort of liberal arts colleges in Tokyo. I teach art business, not art. So for example, I'm trying to make good auctioneers. I've been trying to make, not just curators who would be good business people, curators who would curate, who would add value to those no-name artists, who could do the writing, or who could, basically these no-name artists come out of the college to make markets. So basically training youngsters in art business is one thing. These are real liberal arts business, graduates. So I don't just teach just art students. I try to teach. I have one course at Aoyama Gakuin where I teach art management. We are doing in the autumn after the pandemic is over. I hope you will come. Aoyama Gakuin auction, student auction to sell, his or her colleague, the same age, just the fourth senior age or the second year master's degree, art students. We will make one team, one business student, my student, one art student. Together, they would sell either through a gallery, commercial gallery, they would price, and I would train one of my students to be possibly Sothebys or Christie's quality auctioneer of their beginning. But so these are the things I've been doing to teach, not artists, but to teach people, young people who would help these bottom of pyramid artists. The other thing I'm doing is I'm doing really local auctions. It's not just Tokyo. The people after the pandemic, people tend not to come to Tokyo, even in Japan. So I think, I wonder if you can read it. I've been doing actually, those who are near Kamakura, Tokyo, it's very difficult, like here, to get people to come to auctions or galleries and so on. So I began to do local auctions outside Tokyo for no-name artists, like Kamakura, Kyoto, and Kanazawa. Kyoto I've been doing for almost 10 years, because the city of Kyoto graduates 3,000 art students every year, out of 20,000. So educating for next generation artists as well as business people is my goal. I'm trying to do, as many art events as possible with corporate sponsorships. So that's what I've been doing.
But isn't there a first step before you think about selling or buying art in education? I mean, we have to educate the young people to get interested in art before they buy. So I think there's a big hole in between that, selling and buying, collecting, and education.
Yes.
So I think
Oh yes, yes. That's through part of this is individual education or business people education. Individually is very difficult. It's time consuming. That's why I've been working with corporations, particularly corporations which were founded by entrepreneurs, very young corporations. You know, the entrepreneurial companies. So those are the people, men and women, who are more, more open to buy arts rather than just going to museum. These are really highly educated people, people in IT, new services, Ubers, you know, new taxis, Bitcoins, everything. These are really new entrepreneurs, late 20s to early 30s. They are the ones that I've been, not educated, I've been sort of, educating is not a good word. I've been trying to send messages to them. The art, particularly no-name artists, you know, they share their career development with entrepreneurs. So educating buyers per se is but the corporate level, it's less time consuming because if I have one company who have 200 employees, young, you know, IT tech, biotech, anything, that they would be, you know, rather than just one individual talking, I would get maybe 20 new buyers all the time. So that's what I've been doing. I've been working, by the way, he or she is not here. By the way, I've been working with Shonan Science Park or biotech. And art, for example, arts and science, like Rockefeller University, basic science college, university. They graduate many Nobel Prize artists, Nobel Prize scientists. I've been working with, for example, Scientific Research Center in Shonan, that they are very keen. They're scientific basic research. Scientists, basic science scientists have a very similar career as an artist. Their basic scientific research in the college or at work, they are never understood. They are very new. It's coronavirus or anything, you know, cancer, AIDS. So I've been working with other industry people, youngsters, that art could stimulate their intellectual thinking. So that's part of my sort of nurturing, growing, not just artists, but these business people or general public, youngsters, for them to open their eyes to purchasing or nurturing emerging and young artists. So education is everywhere. It's a professional people as well as students.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Shibayama, quickly also, you brought your hammer in. Can you show us your auction hammer?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also an auctioneer. The last time I was here, again, I was the auctioneer for NYU. I think it was just about here in this room. I was the auctioneer for their charity auction to fund their scholarships. Obviously, NYU is very expensive, almost as expensive as Harvard, I think. So I was the auctioneer for the night, that night, and we fetched roughly, I don't know how much, but one of the best-selling items was the dinner with the dean of NYU for 8. I think it fetched something like 10 million yen or something. It's just a dinner, but it was a fun auction to do. There were some paintings to be sold. Paintings were donated to one of the alumni, NYU alumni. NYU has a great Steinhardt School of Art. And so that was the last time. May I just finish with my hammer?
Please.
Thank you very much. Done.